So having made that clear, let's move on to the rest of the proposal crafting. What follows is a checklist of what to include, along with a brief explanation. First is the invitation to bid letter, a sample of which is included in your resource section. The second is the proposal document itself, which includes introduction and background. This section should provide a little background on the company and/or the project. This helps to give the vendors an even playing field and sets the stage for what they are building their proposal around. Depending upon the perceived value of the need, companies may include more details with respect to their company guidelines, principles, ethics, and quality of service. In most cases, unless the RFP requires a lot of on-site engagement, this section is pretty short and to the point. Next is the intention of the owner, acceptance or rejection of submissions. This section is important in that it helps to solidify the company's position with respect to how they will treat submissions. It is critically important to state at the front end whether or not the company will accept incomplete bids and if they will reject late bids. Vendors want and need to know that just because they submit a proposal does not mean the company will accept it. Following that is the evaluation criteria. It is also commonplace to explain in the RFP document how the accepted proposals will be evaluated. In these days of concerns over fair bidding practices, it is always beneficial when companies are transparent about how they will review and analyze each and every proposal. Here's a sample of what a pretty standard statement says. This bid evaluation process is comprised of 4 components: commercial, technical, environmental health and safety, and bid quality necessary to achieve the results for the company. All submissions will be evaluated against these weighted components to determine which proposals will be recommended for award of contract. The next item are the instructions to bidders. This section of the RFP sets out how the proposals are to be submitted, which can range from hard copy, mailed in, electronic by mail, or through an FTP site. It should also include instructions on who and how communications with respect to the RFP are to be made. Additionally, where applicable, it would describe how vendors are to submit their questions and/or exceptions to the contract terms. Next are the response deadlines. This section clearly sets out the time, date, and place the submissions are to be made. It should be clear as to what will happen if a late proposal is made. Next is no binding agreement. It is here where the privilege clause or statements discussed earlier should be included. Following that are the rights of the owner, the company, to accept or reject proposals. Here is some example wording, but remember it should either be written or approved by the legal department. Company may, without any liability, cost, or penalty, in its sole discretion and at any time during the bid process, as applicable thereafter, A. Reject any or all of the proposal. B. Accept any proposal or parts thereof. C. If only one proposal is received, elect to accept or reject it in whole or in part. D. Accept a proposal which is higher price than any other proposal. E. Elect not to proceed with the proposal process. F. Cancel the proposal process. Following that is the RFP submission validity. This time frame should take into consideration the time it will take the RFP team to correctly and accurately analyze and evaluate all of the proposals. In most cases, this process always takes longer than you think it will, so err on the long side where possible. The last thing you want to do is to get through all the details, finish the analysis, and make the recommendation for award, only to find, as you are about to award it, that the proposal details and pricing are no longer valid. Next are the clarification and verifications of bidder's response. This is where you describe when, how, and what the results of the company requesting more information on the vendor's proposals are. Why is it important? In some cases, vendors that receive requests for information may consider them as being part of negotiations and that they are the selected vendor. The RFP document needs to be clear that the company may, in its sole discretion, 1. Require bidders to clarify contents of its bid response. 2. Require bidders to submit supplementary documentation clarifying matters contained in its bid response. 3. as well as the company confirms that any request for clarifications for any bid is to be considered part of the RFP and is not an indication of any award or contract negotiations. Subsequent to that is the withdrawal of proposal. It should be made clear in the RFP how a vendor can withdraw their proposal after submission. Why? Analysis of RFPs is a time-intensive and often lengthy process. It can draw on many resources during the process. Therefore, the company needs to make clear that the vendor submissions are taken seriously. The vendor should know that once they submit their bids, and in the event they are successful, their bid will stand. The last thing the company needs is for them to go through the process, get ready to award, and have a vendor decide that they no longer wish to take part in the RFP. Therefore, the RFP should say something to the effect, a bidder may withdraw its bid response by written request or email only, and only prior to the closing date and time. Next is notification. The RFP should clearly state whether or not the company will notify unsuccessful bidders. It is also customary to advise unsuccessful bidders as, if, how, and when they will be providing a debriefing on the RFP. And finally, sample agreement. Each RFP should contain a complete sample of the proposed contract for the bidders to review. That sample, along with the completed exception forms, will go a long way in reducing the amount of time spent in negotiations on the commercial details of the agreement.